Jesus freak here. I've realized where a big amount of difference comes from about Baptistic soteriology. The thing is, there's some of us who see baptism more as an analogy to circumcision. And there's others who see it more as an analogy to something more like bar mitzvah. Those who are Paedo-Baptist, and I've mentioned the whole thing about the origin of infant baptism being in pagan superstitions about changelings, oafs. But there's also the fact that they tie it with circumcision. Now I'm okay with what they do. Just don't call it baptism because it's not baptism. The word is christening. Call it a christening. But leave the word baptism for actual baptism. And if you've seen the language that I use to describe the purpose of baptism, and you look at how bar mitzvahs are described, the phrase bar mitzvah means son of the commandment. And it represents the entering into the old covenant independent of one's parents. And that's probably the best analogy I can find for a practice in Judaism analogous to how I understand baptism. I talk about adulthood, contracts, knowledge, understanding, consent, and stuff like that. And that stuff's very much in line with the concepts of bar mitzvah more than the circumcision thing. And I mean, if you're going to talk about circumcision, Paul's like, what's the point? He says people who willingly get circumcised and converting have fallen from grace. And is like, what's the point? It's not from the Bible, but there is an apocryphal quote attributed to Jesus that said if circumcision was useful, we'd be born that way. Anyway, circumcision is a big part of the analogies that you will hear used when people trying to justify infant baptism. Like I said, that's okay. Don't call it baptism because it's not. Do that whole routine if you want. There's nothing wrong with it. You're dedicating a child to God. It's perfectly fine. Just don't call it baptism. Baptism is an entering into the new covenant. That's for adults. That's for people who know what they're getting into. You can't force a person into a contract against their will, and God wouldn't do that either. Anyway, Jesus freak out.